These animals?
Oh. Well, we were talking about which animals you would be most afraid of. They all look relatively terrifying, and there's this little frog.
The frog's cute. I actually think the spider's kind of cute.
I would have to disagree with you.
Does that make me weird?
But it's cuter than this thing.
Yeah, it's the bird species.
Devil
That's
creature.
why you don't like it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Welcome to this episode of OverBoard. Today Michael, I'm speaking now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Today we are taking a little bit of a different route. And we are going to give you guys some tips and tricks when you are trying to tackle learning a new strategy board game. Because sometimes it actually may be a little more overwhelming than you may have anticipated. So that's why we want to help you guys work through that process, because we don't want you to buy a game and then have difficulty learning it, and then that never becomes a game you play.
Yep.
Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Let's get to it.
Okay. So I wanted to start off by first off. Do you guys like my Mickey shirt?
Do you like my shirt?
He got this for me when he was in Disney World. Remember?
I do.
Yeah.
I picked it out for you, and I didn't know if you were going to like it, but
it
turned out it was a big hit.
I like my Mickey shirt. Anyway, I am going to start off by talking about complexity ratings. I think complexity ratings are important because if you find your comfort zone, it will stop you from buying a game that may be too complex. It's something that you don't want to spend the time learning, okay? So what we do is we have this website we go to called Board Game Geek. I know, it's called Board Game Geek, but it has a lot of valuable information about board games. And what they did was you can search any board game, and they had people rate the game on a scale of 1 through 5, 1 being the least complex, 5 being the most complex, and then they averaged out those scores. So what the games get is a rating like 3.34 or something like that. And so once you realize the complexity level of the games you play, that can give you a good baseline as to what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a side note, you can also search any game's popularity. So they rank the most popular games from 1 to like 20,000. So if you're looking for popular games, you look at the first couple pages. And
yeah. So I just want to give you a reference point. Monopoly is about what, 1.3?
1.66, we said.
1.66.
Very easy.
Very easy. Uno was
the easiest, 1.12.
1.12.
Like
and then Catan, which is kind of like the new Monopoly, is 2. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad. 2.3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to reference with that, this game, Dominant Species, which we really like, is 4.08 out of 5. But we play a lot of games that aren't as complex as that. But I really like to look into a game's complexity before I buy it, because that's going to tell me what I'm in for. So just keep that in mind. That's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to talk about is, and let's open up Dominant Species here. We brought these games out here just for show. But I wanted to talk about not being so intimidated by the amount of game pieces. You're going to talk about these later. By the amount of game pieces. Like, as I unpack Dominant Species, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to grab a bunch of tiles. I'm going to grab a little bit less tiles, a deck of cards, a bag with all kinds of different little tokens in there, pieces, red pieces, black pieces, teal pieces, all these. And then down here at the very bottom is a big giant board, and you can spend all sorts of time just emptying the box and punching out all the pieces. But one thing that you should know about a lot of these games that get into the higher complexity rating is where there's a game like Monopoly where you have a board, and then like you have the deeds, and you have the houses and hotels, and everybody kind of shares them. A lot of games like this, each individual player is going to have their own pieces. They're going to have their own board that they're playing on. They're going to have their own set of pieces that they're going to try to do stuff with. So all these pieces really are the same. They just belong to different players. But a lot of people kind of psych themselves out when they just see the contents of a box before they really figure out what it all means.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to remember. Mm-hmm. I always get a little overwhelmed still when I open boxes, but then once you get to know everything, it's really not that bad. Mm-hmm. Another thing I really wanted to quickly say was that there are a lot of videos and YouTube tutorials out there. Our videos are meant to help you pick out a game more so, but there's a lot of really good rule videos out there. So if you feel like reading a rule book is too much for you, watch on YouTube, search it, and I'm sure you will find a video that will help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I wanted to say that really helps me when I'm learning a board game is I set it up first. So if you just try and read the rule book and you don't have the game set up and starting play, I think it's really overwhelming. But once you get that whole board out there and you have all the pieces out there, that's a really good first step. So the first thing I always do is set up the game like we're about to play. Mm-hmm. That's what I always do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out that you guys may not know exists is in most strategy games, there's these things called player aids. And each game, the player aid's like a little bit different. But what they do is they give you an overview or a summary of the rules that you can have in front of you while you're playing. And this is obviously really helpful early on. And then as you play more and more times, you obviously don't need the player aid as much, but there's still some games where we use the player aid all the time, and we look in the rule book all the time. So don't be afraid, like, oh my gosh, I need to look in the rule book. That's fine. I wanted to show you Dominant Species, what the player aid looks like this. And you can see it goes over all the actions that a player can do. This is for the insects.
So speaking of rule books then, and my last tip is to not be intimidated by the size of a rule book. This is the rule book for Dominant Species. This is the back of it. And if you can see, I don't know if you can, it says page 20 on the very bottom. 20-page rule book is going to turn some people off right away before they even open it and figure out what's inside. And like the print on the inside is kind of small. There's a lot going on here. But if you really break it down, you can kind of get a sense that it doesn't really take quite that long, because a lot of this is going to be, this is a glossary. A lot of these rule books are going to be like half of it might be dedicated to special situations or something like that. This particular game, Sammy mentioned actions a minute ago. That's a word that you're going to need to get used to. A lot of these games kind of, you go around the table and each player gets to take a certain number of actions. And different games have different sorts of options of what different actions you can take when it's your turn. And she showed you the player aid. Well, Dominant Species is a game where you can take any of 12 different actions. So the reason why this rule book is so big is because it takes like a page to explain each one of those 12 different actions. But once you learn them, and kind of as you're going through them, you can get a sense of, it's pretty easy to figure out what they all do and when you might use them when you're at that point and you have that certain knowledge about what the game's all about.
Yeah, and I just have two more quick things I want to say. I think you brought up a really good point. If once you learn the rules, play through the game right then and there as quickly as you can after learning the rules, because you want to make sure that you remember them, and let it be clunky. The first time we've gone through, we just got this really awesome game called Brass Birmingham, and the first time Mike and I played it, like, boy, was it clunky. Like, we were looking at the rule book. I was like, wait, do I do this? And he was like, but then we played it once, and then we played it again, and it went a lot smoother the second time.
And you'll get to a point once it becomes smooth like that where the light will click on and you will realize, oh, this is why this game is so fun. And this is why people like it so much. And you'll be able to envision yourself playing it many, many times and really enjoying it.
And also, you can always reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. If there's a game that you're stuck on, we would love to help you out. So that's just a little bit of information we want to give you guys. Hopefully it helps you if you ever find a game that you are interested in playing.